Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever struggled with chronic pain or back pain or thought surgery was the only answer, then do we have the Back in Control show for you. Today I'll be talking with Dr. David HANSCOM, a complex deformity spine surgeon of over 30 years and the best-selling author of Back in Control. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about a roadmap to get out of chronic pain and without surgery. That plus we'll talk about OCD and panic attacks, shopping for used cars, jumping off cornices, migraines on the 4th of July, flat tires and labeling, how not to think of white bears, and what in the world we can all learn from your daughter Jazz, a tango party, and $20.
Wow, you read the book. That's great. I love it.
Awesome. So welcome to the show, David. Are you ready to shine?
Absolutely.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So before we even dive right into things, what have you been doing that's helping to put you out of spine surgery business?
In my first book, I wrote a piece that said, look, if a person in chronic pain has a surgical lesion, then do the surgery more aggressively because people in chronic pain don't tolerate more pain. It turns out the data shows that if you operate in the presence of a fired up nervous system, you can make the pain worse up to 40% of the time. So about a few years ago, we started what's called a prehab program where we calm down the nervous system, we get people to sleep, we stabilize medications, we get them relaxing, exercising, and our surgical results have been spectacular. I don't see the failures, but most interestingly is that people with surgical lesions actually go pain-free without the surgery. So that is completely unexpected, something I never remotely thought possible, and it's been a remarkable change in thinking. So it's become very challenging to make a living as a spine surgeon.
I would bet that you're actually helping even more people now.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, the second book is much clearer. It's based on neuroscience research, where the first one I did not know the neuroscience research. And so it's clear, it's succinct, it's written better. I'm a better writer now 5 years later. And people are responding very, very quickly. So within 3 to 6 months, people that engage, probably 90% of them go to pain-free. Mm-hmm. Some people faster, sometimes it's a year or two. So it really depends when you truly let go and calm down.
Awesome. So I want to back up and go a little bit into your journey. If we go back in time, because I think this is important for understanding your own back journey, what was your childhood like?
It was abusive. I had a mother who was she was bipolar, unipolar depressive, mm-hmm. almost psychotic, and she had frequent rages. She was very narcissistic, and she was verbally and physically abusive. So we have 4 children who were raised in that environment. And she just cut a very, very wide swath in our family. It was difficult.
Wow. And I'm guessing that you didn't know it at the time. What started to happen around 1990? And I'm guessing you were practicing surgery at that time.
Well, 2 things. First of all, when you're raised in that environment, that's all you know. Mm-hmm. It seems normal, right? So at age 15, I simply shut the door of my life and I invented myself. I became smart, personable, athletic, all these different things that you attach to. But the reality was I dissociated. So I got A's in college, high school. I was on honor rolls. I was all sorts of things. And I made it to medical school. I was in the top 10% of my class in medical school. And then I went to one of the top spine fellowships in the world in Minneapolis, Minnesota at the time. And I started having panic attacks 2 years into my practice. And by 1990, it was a full-blown panic attacks. And I had no idea what was going on. I actually did not know what anxiety was. First of all, I was raised in an environment that had only anxiety. Mm-hmm. Second of all, I then suppressed it masterfully. That's how I became a major spine surgeon. And I went from not having any anxiety that I could recognize to having full-blown panic attacks. It was unbelievable.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about dissociating. You have a story in the book about how in your summers you were working construction and you were known as the brick. And,
right.
And you put walls up, but you also hammered things down, and you hammered yourself right in the thumb with tremendous pain, and you were able to disassociate and keep going.
Right. No, it was a 28-ounce framing hammer, very long handle, and I used to take pride in putting a hammer into the 2x4 within 1 or 2 strokes. So it was a full stroke. My thumb was on the foot plate, And as a hammer came down, it bounced off of a piece of plumbing and came dead center of my thumb, full force. Could not have been a harder hit. So my boss was right next to me. I stood up, looked at my hand. I wrapped it in a handkerchief and kept working. And he just thought I was absolutely out of my mind. I mean, he just was blown away. I didn't even think about it.
Wow. So going forward from then, and by 90, you're starting to get panic attacks. By 1997, you said you were developing 16 different symptoms of NPD. What was going on, and what does that mean?
So I did not understand what NPD was until 2011, when a Dr. Schubner from Detroit gave a lecture on what he calls mind-body syndrome. It's been called TMS. It's been called PPD, et cetera. So what it is, when your body's full of adrenaline, each organ system will respond in its own unique way. So symptoms include migraine headaches, ringing in the ear, burning sensations, skin rashes. So I had migraine since I was age 5. I had ringing in my ears since 1980. I had burning in my feet when I ran, and I thought it was just the hot pavement. I had no idea it was this other NPD thing. I had back pain, neck pain. I had extreme anxiety. And by 1997, I had a full-blown obsessive-compulsive disorder. In fact, today's website post is all about OCD. So what happened, I didn't know how I got into it. All I knew, I was miserable beyond description. And I do point out in the book pretty clearly that I was suicidal by 2002, and I didn't know what to do. I had no idea. So what's happened since I inadvertently came out of this whole process and inadvertently decreased my body's adrenaline, all the symptoms disappeared. It sounds like, right. No, I mean, again, if you think about it logically, why your whole body is bathed in a chemical environment. For instance, when your body's full of adrenaline, the animal studies show you increase the nerve conduction by 30 to 40%. And it makes sense because if as an animal or a living creature, you're threatened, your body is designed to survive. It will become hypervigilant. So the actual conduction goes up, your actual physical pain increases. Or if you have a bone spur that is asymptomatic, once that adrenaline goes up, that bone spur may now become symptomatic. That's what's happening to the patients who are avoiding surgery, is that I'm going, look, the bone spur has been there for years. These symptoms started a few months ago. What changed? Well, as a surgeon, I used to take out the bone spur. I now understand that situational stresses change the body's chemistry and create symptoms. So I have almost 60 patients now with surgical lesions. They inevitably will have some type of horrible loss. Loss of a child, loss of a son, daughter, loss of a job, whatever you want to discuss. And once you get them through that loss, the body chemistry calms down, pain goes away. No surgery. And there's really nothing more satisfying as a surgeon to see a patient who's been in chronic pain go to pain-free without surgery. There's no cost, no risk. And after 30 years of doing spine surgery, you realize that every operative intervention has a significant risk.
It's interesting because not only does each operative intervention have a substantial risk to it, but the risk is even higher when that volume is cranked up to the max.
Right.
That's like the time to do not touch.
The data shows, which I did not know until even about a year ago, that there are numerous papers showing that when you operate in the presence of chronic pain, that part of the brain is already lit up, and you can induce chronic pain at the new surgical site up to 40% of the time. In other words, if you have chronic neck pain and you have a hernia repair, you can induce chronic pain at the hernia site up to 40% of the time. And a hernia is a pretty simple operation that really causes pain. People do not discuss inducing chronic pain as a potential complication of surgery. So there's another paper out of Baltimore that shows that although the data has been very clear for almost 50 years that these factors like anxiety, depression, catastrophizing do affect outcomes, less than 10% of surgeons are documented to actually assess the problem.
So what are some of the early steps that we take to start to back away from the pain and get that volume turned down?
First of all, you cannot do it intellectually. What does not work is positive thinking and mind over matter. You cannot do that. So the concepts are based on decreasing the body's adrenaline. These pain pathways are permanent, so you have to create new pathways around the old pathways, or you can shift on to pathways that are not painful, like play pathways. So there's a sequence I put on the book and the website. The website's the action plan of the book. And in the new book, section 1 is about the descent into pain, how the problems occurred. The second section is the principles behind the solution. Then the third stage is a 4-stage process of how to come out of chronic pain. Then the final section is just a wrap-up section. So the key issue is understanding chronic pain. Mm-hmm. You treat every variable at the same time, and then the patient takes control. Once the patient takes control, it's just a matter of time.
Excellent. So I want to talk about some of these different steps. Before there, I want to back up to something you just said so we understand the why behind it. Why is it not about thinking positively?
Well, if you look at pain as, I wrote a new section called the neurophysiological basis of pain.
Yeah.
And what it shows is that it turns out that thoughts are probably the basis of chronic pain. In other words, every physical sensation, taste, touch, sound, feel, etc., all can be positive and elicit reward chemicals like dopamine and oxytocin, the love drug, or every physical sensation can be unpleasant, bright lights, in your world barefoot running, hot sand and whatever. So that secretes adrenaline and cortisol, and then you feel anxiety. Mm-hmm. So when you feel relaxed, you're just feeling a chemical surge. When you feel anxiety, that's just a chemical surge. In other words, anxiety is a chemical response to sensory input. The new research shows that thoughts do the same thing. Humans have a major problem is that they have thoughts do the exact same thing that other physical sensations do. So pleasant thoughts, relaxation. Unpleasant thoughts yield adrenaline and cortisol. Mm-hmm. The problem that humans have compared to every other living creature is that you cannot escape your thoughts. So you can suffer your thoughts. They get worse with time. You can suppress them, which makes them even stronger, and basically the essence of OCD. Then the third thing that we all do is mask them. So whether you suffer, suppress, or mask, you have this relentless progression of anxiety. So what positive thinking is a global form of suppressing. And it's sort of a disaster. In fact, it's a huge disaster. So if you use gratitude and positive thinking, even mindfulness, as a weapon against chronic pain, you have no chance because you're using a rational means to deal with unconscious pathways, which are 1 million times stronger than the conscious brain. So if you first separate from these pathways and then substitute things like positive substitution, mindfulness meditation, those are the basic reprogramming tools that are very powerful. So if you put the whole process together, it's extraordinarily powerful. And it turns out that mindfulness and meditation as an adjunct to the first part of the process is a huge basic step. But you got to calm down, but you have to separate before you can calm things down. Again, positive thinking might never matter. It means you're doing battle against these circuits that are unsolvable.
What you resist persists.
Correct. Absolutely.
So I want to talk about how we start to diffuse the bomb. One of the first early steps, it seems critically important to me, and people really don't think about it much in today's society, and I realize we're worldwide, so I guess I'm speaking more of the West in this case, but is the importance of sleep and dialing down the nervous system. Right.
It's a little complicated in that sleep is... So first of all, what I learned this year, there's a paper out of Israel on over 3,000 patients. It's a 3-year study. 1,200 patients over 3 years, showing that lack of sleep actually induces chronic pain. It causes chronic pain. I always thought that chronic pain caused people not to sleep. That's not true because they did not find the resource causation.
Yep.
So without adequate sleep, this whole conversation is null and void. So there's sleep hygiene, there's over-the-counter medications. We find out what's called expressive writing at bedtime can help induce sleep. So in the new book, in the last section of the book, I talk about 8 different strategies to induce sleep. And the last couple involve actually seeing a sleep specialist if all else fails, but you have to sleep.
What's expressive writing, if you don't mind me asking?
So I was in chronic pain for 15 years. I picked up a book by David Burns called Feeling Good, and David Burns said to write. So I started to write. So at the time, I thought that the book was the answer. It turns out that the writing was the answer. because within 2 weeks after 15 solid years of unrelenting anxiety, chronic pain, things started to change. And you simply write down your thoughts and tear them up. Now, the research, what I didn't realize when I wrote the first book, is that there are over 300 research articles that document the effectiveness of writing things down. The original research is done mostly on negative writing, where you write down negative thoughts and tear them up. It turns out that it doesn't matter what you write. You simply separate from your thoughts. Remember, thoughts are just thoughts. They're real because they cause a chemical reaction, but they're not your reality. And we all know about the story we tell about ourselves in our lives, but they're just thoughts. So the reason why I have patients tear up these pieces of paper is that you, first of all, are separating from these thoughts. So the thoughts are on the table. You're here. That space is connected with vision and feel. Mm-hmm. The reason why you tear them up is to write with freedom. So the second thing is, if you analyze your thoughts, where's your attention? It's on you. So if you look in terms of neuroplasticity of stimulating the brain to change, you can't change it by focusing on what you just are trying to solve. So counseling is very valuable, but not by itself. You have to use counseling as a redirection tool, not as a solution. So the expressive writing is the only one step in the whole process that's the foundation of the whole process. I've had essentially no patients go to pain free without that first step.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'm going to want to dive more into these steps. Before that, since we were talking about your childhood and we were talking about suppression, what's the relationship between anger and chronic pain?
Well, chronic pain is upsetting, right? You're trapped. And anytime you're trapped by anything, whether it's your job or your boss or a bad relationship, why you become angry. It's your move to get out of the situation. Mm-hmm. So chronic pain is horrible. And again, going back to our progression that humans cannot escape their thoughts, every human being is basically trapped by their thoughts. So I think it's a progression of thoughts, by the way, that sets up the foundation for chronic pain developing. Every person has anxiety. We don't have a means to escape it. And so when you become trapped, your body gets really full of adrenaline and your nervous system gets really cranked up. Mm-hmm. Then you have outside circumstances that create anger and frustration. Pain creates anger and frustration. So now you have a link. So if you have adverse circumstances that cause anger, those anger pathways are now connected to pain and vice versa. So almost every one of my patients within weeks can see the relationship between stress and their pain.
It's a huge point. So let's go from there and let's talk about the 5 steps in this process. Let's talk about step number 1, or actually let's talk about the different stages. Can you tell us about stage number 1?
So the new book is down to 4 stages, by the way, not the 5. I did switch that around. And it's all based on awareness, separation, and reprogramming. Mm-hmm. So as you know from the mindfulness world, the first step for any solution is to become aware of the problem. So stage 1 is the foundation homework stage, and you become aware of chronic pain. You become aware of your circumstances, relationship to the pain. You become aware of your diagnosis, and you become aware of the solution. So it's a homework phase. I ask my patients to stop seeking medical care for a month. Just stop. And quit that frenzied search to find the solution. Just learn about chronic pain. The second step is to start the act of expressive writing.
Can I pause you on step number 1 there for a minute?
Sure.
Can you help us explain why we don't want to take in any more input? Is it that we're getting ourselves kind of in this frothing frenzy the more that we're taking in, or we're identifying with it too much?
Right. Well, first of all, I would say essentially the only block to healing mm-hmm. is people's willingness to engage. And unfortunately, one of the symptoms of the process, which are these spinning circuits that are irrational, blocks the treatment. So people are angry, they're frustrated, they can't honestly process the concepts, and I can't get through. It's like trying to get through a tornado. So that's the block I have actually not solved yet. Mm-hmm. So there'll be people listening to your program that are saying, this is crazy, this is ridiculous, but they're not even open to understanding any part of it. And probably that occurs in up to half of my patients. So that's the most distressing part of the project. I see endless number of patients who get better, and I see an endless number of patients who don't come back. And there's nothing I can do. So I've had to learn to let that one go. So I'm still working, still searching, still committed. If a given person wants to come back and re-engage, which happens occasionally, I'm open. But that anger, frustration actually blocks comprehension to just slow down and listen.
So it makes sense that you need to be able to step back to calm things down, at least internally enough. It's almost like pouring a little bit out of the cup so that you have room for something new to come in.
That's a great metaphor. Absolutely.
So let's go from there. Thank you. Let's go from there to step 2, beginning expressive writing then.
So the expressive writing, I actually get people to, I say, look, if you never touch my book, never touch my website, simply start this one tool, it'll change your life. And again, going back to the human condition of not escaping your thoughts, there's something about the expressive writing that breaks up these circuits. I don't know what it is. There's no question that it works. We don't know how or why it works, but it works. And I can tell within 10 seconds when I walk into a room if somebody's been engaged in the writing or not. So I always ask, and they always answer the question the way I think they're going to answer it. And when they talk about not doing it, they give an endless number of excuses, or they don't really believe it, etc. So I can just tell. I have lots of patients come in at 2 weeks for their follow-up visit, and they just laugh. They go, this is ridiculous. And I had one guy, it took me 2 years to convince him to engage in the process. I actually had him sign up for surgery. He's a professor at the university. And interestingly enough, he actually specialized in chronic pain. Says that, look, humor. He said, I'll do your surgery, but just please start the writing. And he came back 2 weeks later and started to laugh. And he canceled his surgery. The pain disappeared. If you look at my website, there's a website post on my Amazon page. There's a testimony of a person that says, I'm skeptical as can be. I don't believe in this stuff, but I gave it a try. And lo and behold, within 2 days, my pain was gone. As you know, as the introduction of my book, there's a gentleman, Mark Owens, who was in Africa for 23 years. Tough guy. He only left Africa after his 3rd assassination attempt by poachers. So he broke his back 10 years ago, developed horrible chronic pain. He was recommended by 2 surgeons to have a fusion from his neck all the way to his pelvis, 12 hours of surgery. So he came to me for a third opinion. I said, look, there's nothing there. There's nothing to operate on. So he's a scientist, and I said, look, start the writing exercises. And he absolutely thought I was crazy. Within 3 days, he was sleeping, pain dropped down 80%, and by 6 weeks, he was pain-free. I just saw him about 2 months ago, and he was at 2,000 foot elevation, 2 feet of snow, pulling his pack horse up the hill, no pain, no meds.
Wow!
It all started with the writing.
Awesome.
So the writing, and so what I did know, the writing was based on my personal experience. By accident, I had no idea that the research was that deep on the writing. It's just really, in fact, it's such a basic part of the human consciousness that I still have a program put together putting this into the school system. So kids get angry and frustrated, and the simple writing exercises diffuses the circuits, and it would change the world.
When I do coaching, whether it's group coaching, individual coaching, whatever it is, one of the first steps that I put in is to get people writing and to get that pen flowing. We need to get in touch with ourselves again and in touch with what's going on the inside.
Right.
So let's go from there and let's take step number 3, practicing active meditation. What does that mean and look like?
So the whole process is based on physically changing the structure of your brain. We call it neuroplasticity. And when I was in medical school 30 years ago, we thought that the brain had a certain number of brain cells that you could only lose over a lifetime. We did not understand that the brain can change very, very quickly. So you can grow new nerve cells, you can grow new connections, you can add on layers of myelin, and the brain changes within days. So what happens is based on awareness and separation. In other words, you have to become aware of the automatic survival response, create a little bit of a space, and then you substitute. So the reprogramming can be almost anything, but the basic one we start with is what I call active meditation, or in abbreviated mild mindfulness. And what I found out with the mindfulness is, I remember we talked about thoughts create the same chemical reaction as adverse physical sensations. What mindfulness does is simply switches sensory input. So you go from these racing thoughts to touch, taste, and we just feel the back of your chair for a second. We do it in surgery all day long, 3 to 5 seconds, done.
I still remember, just to pause it, because one of your things that you taught, we did an interview for Mindful Running years ago, and one of those things stuck with me, and I've done as an exercise for other people now, which is you taught people you taught surgeons to feel the scalpel.
Right.
And to feel what that feels like. And I've blown that tool out in many areas, just mindful driving. Feel your grip on the steering wheel and it brings you back. So that's brilliant.
Right. I mean, the studies show that people cannot really multitask. And people know you're supposed to be in the present moment, be here now. The problem is, in my early days of surgery, I was going focus, 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 focus. The problem is that you're focused on focusing, you're not connected to the movement, right? Mm-hmm. So the way you get to be here now, like this very second, I'm just feeling the back of my chair. I'm listening to you. So when you're connected to the sensory input in front of you, you are now by definition connected to the moment. So connecting to sensory input is a huge factor in this whole process. The 3 phases I talk about, which I think you would consider just basic mindfulness, is you relax, let it settle or stabilize, then you pick a sensation. So my patients all the time, and we'll just do it right now, just drop your shoulders for a second, let that stabilize, and then feel the back of your chair. And then feel where your feet are on the floor. Mm-hmm. Let your jaw muscles relax, shoulders relax, elbows, arms. And do you hear any sounds?
You.
Do not. I actually hear a faint sound back there.
Yeah, there's an airplane overhead.
Yeah, just listen to sound. So obviously you wouldn't have heard the airplane unless you were focused on it. So right now you're focused on sensations. Listen to my voice, whatever you want to do. And I don't know if you notice, I noticed that my voice has dropped down a little bit. Mm-hmm. I've actually slowed down a little bit. And it does several things. First of all, it decreases your adrenaline because you're relaxing. Secondly, as you connect your body with your mind, you simply become more connected. And then you're in the present moment. In surgery, as we go to, if you're anxious or frustrated, you tend to grip the instruments very, very tightly. Yeah. You lose your touch and your feel. So my complication rates probably dropped 80% over the years. It's been a huge difference. So surgery becomes a performance. It's light. It's easy. It's like playing a concert piano, which I think is a superhuman event. And so surgery has turned into a major performance with a very choreographed sequence of events, including staying relaxed. It's been really a remarkable experience.
Beautiful. Can you take us from there to step number 4, don't share your pain?
What I didn't realize is that people that in chronic pain tend to talk about their pain all the time. Probably 80% of my people, patients become socially isolated. They talk to other people in pain. And the problem is your brain's going to develop wherever you place its attention. So what you're doing with neuroplasticity is like diverting a river into a different channel. Mm-hmm. So if you want to talk about your pain, that's where your attention is going to be. 2 factors that portend a negative prognosis is belong to a pain support group. People tend to share their pain. And also keeping a pain diary. As you start tracking your pain, that's where your nervous system is. I also found out that I'm a strong, strong believer in AA meetings. Mm-hmm. But I just learned recently that people tend to talk about their pain and even though they acknowledge their victim status, they tend to share it and talk about it. When I do seminars back east with my wife and a Dr. Luskin out of Stanford, the basic ground rule is that you cannot share your pain. And it throws people off. I had no idea how much people talked about their pain until we did that seminar. And within 5 days, we had 80% of our participants go to pain-free.
Wow. You just mentioned a very important phrase, whatever we want to call it, victim. When we start talking about our pain and we identify the pain as ourselves, we go into this victim role or victim mentality that we feel, well, when you're a victim, you're stuck.
Correct. Right. So that takes us to stage 2, if you want to talk about stage 2. It's about forgiveness and play, right?
Perfect.
And Dr. Luskin's a friend of mine now. He wrote a book called Forgive for Good out of Stanford. Mm-hmm. He did 4 major research projects on forgiveness. 2 of those projects were with the parents of children who had been murdered, which is pretty intense. So obviously the murderers had done a horrible thing to these families, but they also took away the parents' quality of life because they weren't letting it go, obviously for good reason. So forgiveness does not have a religious connotation to it. It's about taking your life back. And as long as you hold on to anything in the past, you're actually neurologically linked to that event. So if you look in terms of awareness, separation, and reprogramming, as far as neuroplasticity, you cannot separate until you forgive. So stage 1 combines the writing with active meditation, which is a basic step. Stage 2 is more of a complex step where forgiveness is a much more complex way of letting go. One study showed that 95% of people in chronic pain had not forgiven the person or situation that injured them. But interestingly enough, the person they were most upset at was themselves. They weren't forgiving themselves. So it was when that book came into my practice, Forgive for Good, that's when people started to go to pain-free, which again was unexpected.
Have you heard of Ho'oponopono? I
have. I actually wrote a website post on that. I don't remember exactly right now. You probably do.
Well, I don't want to put you on the spot with it, but it's an ancient Hawaiian forgiveness tool or practice, which is very painful. There's a strange slip. It's very powerful at forgiveness and moving past the pain.
Do you remember the words by chance?
Absolutely. And there are 4 different, you can say it in any order. I'll tell you the order that I do it. I use it all the time. I recommend it for everybody when I coach as well. It's I love you. Please forgive me. I am sorry. Thank you.
Got it. Yeah, it's huge. The problem with anger is I went to this Hoffman process, which is a 7-day in-house process, and they taught us about negative transference, which is anger. The problem with anger is that it increases the body's adrenaline, which shuts down the blood supply to the frontal lobe of your brain, and you're convicted and you're powerful, and people become addicted to their anger. They don't want to give it up. It's a very, very powerful role. And you recall the sequence of anger is that you have a circumstance that you blame, then you're a victim, then you're angry. The more legitimate your gripe, the harder it is to let it go. But until you can truly let it go, you can read all the books in the world, you can read my book, Dr. Luskin's book, but until you actually, truly forgive at the deepest level imaginable, you're done. You cannot move forward.
How's the expression go? Something to the effect of revenge is a poison you give to yourself. Right.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because all of us know this intellectually. And the problem that I had personally, in my personal journey, I didn't know I was angry. And I had all these disguises of anger, strong opinions, political, religious, whatever. I was critical of other people. I was just frustrated. So remember, I came from an abusive background where anger was the norm. So I honestly did not know I had anger until I was 50 years old. I just didn't. And the other thing that was sobering for me is that my entire life was full of anger. And I became connected to my identity being compassionate, loving, all this sort of stuff. But I was connected to my identity, not to who I was. So it's really not that easy. It's easy, but not so easy to do, to actually take off the disguises, be vulnerable, and just admit that you're angry. But you have to recognize the anger before you can solve it.
I know that's been one of the big pieces on my journey from my childhood. A similar, I would call it a Looney Tunes childhood, is having to be aware. I remember when I met my wife and told her I'd healed all my childhood wounds, and she tried to run the other way.
Well, I told her, it's funny because I said the same thing to my wife, Babs. I said, I'm a pretty good catch because I've been in counseling for years, and I said I've already dealt with my anger issues. I didn't have a clue. It's interesting how you can intellectually think you've dealt with it and not be connected to it all. But so stage 2 is forgiveness, but it's combined with play. So if you're obsessively playing to avoid pain, that doesn't work. But if you can, and you can't really play unless you have forgiven. If you're full of anger, you can't really play, right? So pain pathways are permanent, so are play pathways. And that's actually the most powerful, quickest way to come out of pain pathways is shifting back onto play pathways.
So let's talk about play pathways briefly. Maybe the importance of reconnecting with your creativity.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But I decided that work versus play was an artificial separation. And I decided to have a better time at work. I decided to enjoy my patients more. There's many things about medicine I don't like, but I decided to enjoy the adventure. And what's interesting, when you learn how to play at work, if you want to use that word, it's about awareness. You just become aware of the next set of sensations, and it just transforms everything. So taking a sense of play into all sorts of stuff, there's always problems. As you know, stress is not the problem, it's your reaction to it. So just deciding to have a good time makes a huge difference, and one of the fastest ways to de-adrenalize and shift your nervous system. So again, it's awareness, separation, and reprogramming. And the reprogramming, by the way, can be meditation, visualization, play, cup of coffee, good friends, whatever it is, as long as you separate first. That's the key issue. You have to separate, then you substitute.
What's your favorite way to play?
You know, right now it's interesting. I love to write. I mean, to me, writing is incredibly relaxing. I like to golf. I like to work out. I also just love what I do. I mean, I've truly learned to go to clinic, enjoy what I'm doing, interact with my partners. So the designation between work and play has actually disappeared a lot. That being said, I do have to play more. That's one of my things I need to work on.
You and me both. So let's move forward to moving forward. Can you tell us about stage 3 and what's the power of commitment?
So the thing about anger and pain is that honestly people do not want to give it up, including myself. People have become addicted to the power of pain. And so it's a commitment to move forward whether you feel like it or not. So for instance, lots of times when I go in the victim mode, and by the way, these are permanent pathways, I will always go into the victim mode. I have to commit just to simply do the exercises that I've done in the past to come out of that hole. So for instance, if I quit doing my expressive writing, within 2 weeks, those little skin rashes start showing up on my wrist. My feet start to burn. My ears start to ring. But it's interesting when I'm in victim mode, then I quit doing the things that I know that are going to help me, right? So it comes as a complete package. So you just have to commit to just doing the tools that change your brain, whether you feel like it or not. And it's just a commitment. There's nothing. You honestly are never going to wake up one day and say, I really want to give up being a victim. It's just too powerful.
That makes sense. Can you take us through a tiny bit of stage 4?
So stage 4, to me, is the ultimate part of the journey where you just expand your consciousness to life. You just become open to all possibilities. So it's good food, good wine, good friends, getting your perspective back. What are your high school dreams? What do you want to accomplish? How do you want to enjoy it? And unfortunately, referring back to the first part of the conversation, anxiety pathways become progressively stronger as you get older. Mm-hmm. So your lifetime becomes spent sort of fending off these anxiety pathways, whereas the reality is there's lots of things to do that are just fun. So getting that perspective back, gratitude's a big one. You can call it the spiritual journey if you would like. It can be religious or not. I mean, who knows what form it takes. I think meditation practices are very powerful in stage 4. And it's just a matter of just getting your perspective back, because people in chronic pain flat out lose their perspective. They're in a dark hole. They can't see the way out. They're in a complete survival mode. Creativity disappears. And the more creative and expansive your consciousness becomes, the farther away you are from your pain pathways.
Beautiful. In fact, there's something you talk about in this section. Maybe you can expand upon it. A journey of 1,000 moons.
Right. There's a friend of mine, Ernesto, who I happened to see last night, is a sculptor, an artist, carpenter, and he calculated that in a lifetime of 77 years, there are 1,000 moons. And we get caught up in the today's stuff, but each day you lose being upset and frustrated, it's a day closer to your end of your life. And so the moons, to me, bring back the perspective that you and I are talking. This is it. This month is going to go by. It's just one. I mean, 77 moons is not that many moons, really, in a lifetime. So it just brings that perspective that you enjoy your life now or not. There's no shortcuts here.
That makes sense. From there, you were going through this process as your daughter is growing up. Do you have more than one child?
My son, Nick, is 32 and my stepdaughter Jazz is 26.
So they're growing up through this process. What advice would you give parents who have kids today to teach them from what you've been learning about this?
2 pieces of advice. First of all, allow them to suffer. They have to own their suffering. Right?
Please expand.
So we all know if you take a domestic animal and put it out in the wild, they're not going to survive, right? And we know life, that to be successful in life is really your success in dealing with adversity. So if you're protected from stress as you're growing up, you don't have that resiliency to move forward and actually deal with life. And the second thing is just play. So instead of giving advice to your kids and doing this, this, and this, you just interact with them as human beings. In stage 3 of the website, there's a book that's still, I think, the most powerful book I've read in my entire life. It's called Parent Effectiveness Training by Dr. Thomas Gordon. I read it when my son was about 18 months old, and I've literally told hundreds of people about this book. It changed my life. So it goes from a parent-child label to human, and my son will tell you that he never was officially disciplined in his entire life. Yet he feels like his parents were as strict as they become. So it's not about discipline, it's just about human interaction. And so just being with your kid, enjoying them, listening to them, they develop pathways that are very powerful around play pathways, creativity pathways. Dr. Gordon, one of Dr. Gordon's points amongst many is that children do not wake up every morning thinking of ways to piss off their parents. That's not what they want to do. So parents, by the way, I think this would be a reasonable topic for another interview, is it turns out that there's many, many major factors about chronic pain within the family. So chronic pain has a horrible effect on families. My mother was a chronic pain patient who was abusive. Chronic pain is abusive in the family. It also programs your kids to have the same patterns. So the family unit also, as people try to come out of pain, is often the case where the family actually pulls the person right back into disability. The family dynamics around chronic pain are unbelievable. So that's actually an entire separate topic.
That sounds like one we might want to dive into together on another day.
Yeah.
Awesome. So a few quick wrap-up questions, and then this has been huge. So, and I'll say it on air because I've interviewed you I think it was a couple times for a mindful running program, and you have truly been working on your craft. The difference in you then versus now is huge. And the reason I'm saying it on air is because you've worked on this. You have brought mindfulness and presence to this. Right.
The amount of stress I'm under, this is not widely accepted in the medical profession, right? And I don't get paid for it. Not that I'm crying poor. So I've cut my surgical practice in half. I'm not being paid for that. I get a lot of skepticism around what I'm doing, so it's not fair. So I have a choice to be a victim, right? Or I can really just relish and enjoy the people I heal. And I'm not trying to sound altruistic here, but that's the choice I have. So I've been through this many times every week of my writing, relaxation, deciding to enjoy things, deciding to just move forward in spite of some very fierce attacks. And it's changed my life. I'm a free man. It's been a remarkable journey. So I also realized it's easier to teach the tools than it is to practice them. But I just made a huge commitment to actually use the adversity as the opportunity to practice the tools.
Awesome. So from there, question we like to ask all of our guests just before the end is, what personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
Well, I'll just give you 2 examples this week. It's just watching people that have no hope not only get hope back, but actually get their entire life back. So I had a gentleman who's in his 30s who had been in chronic pain for 15 years, off work for 5 years, and just negative as you can imagine when I saw him about 5 months ago. He came in last week just beaming. His pain was gone, anxiety was down, he was going back to work, he was starting a new relationship, and he was completely transformed. Smiling, interactive, relaxed. Another gentleman who had been in chronic pain for 20 years, owned his own business, and literally was suicidal 5 months ago. And he came in this week absolutely on fire, back to work, owns his own company, creativity is back, marriage is back together. It's just hard to put into words how rewarding and satisfying that is to see. So it's been a remarkable, I mean, for me, I'm a surgeon, and so I'm not used to seeing people get better without surgery like this. My compatriot, Dr. Conoco, is a pain specialist who runs this project. He called off his retirement. He was going to retire 2 years ago, and he and I are having so much fun with this process. He just called off his retirement. So it's been a remarkable journey the last couple of years.
Awesome. And that is a woohoo!
It is, absolutely.
So where can people go to find out more and to find your beautiful book, Back in Control?
So it's all over. It's on Barnes & Noble, it's Amazon, it's through different booksellers. And then I have a website, backincontrol.com, which is the action plan of the book. And the website is totally open. You can register for, I update my website every week with a new blog. And it's just really designed to be open to the public. And so you can get it almost anywhere you need to.
Fantastic. And if you didn't catch that, if you're driving down the road, just come on over to inspirenationshow.com and we'll get you over to David's website as well. This has been woohoo, an awesome, awesome interview. Before we dive into a meditation, do you have any last words of wisdom you want to share with people?
Well, I wrote a website post 2 weeks ago. It's called She Just Let Go. Just let it go. I said you can do the entire doc project or just let go. Done. You're healed. I mean, as you know, this present moment is who you are. And the doc project has no end point. There's no beginning point. The only goal, if you want to call it a goal, is just this very second. This is it. Whatever it is. Positive emotions, negative emotions, just this is it. So just let it go. Enjoy your life.
Woo!
Yeah. No, it's been remarkable for me. And surgeons, of course, are very goal obsessed. So to go from being goal obsessed to just enjoying the day I still have a little work to do. But I'm very committed to working on it.
Awesome. From there, do you have a meditation you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
Well, I just do what I do with my patients in the office. We did a little bit of this before, and I have my scribes and my nurses in the room with me, and I say, look, you're fired up, you're upset, you're learning your material, and I talk about the expressive writing, and then I have them just sit back and say, look, just relax. I'm going to have you relax for a second and drop your shoulders. And I remind them that active meditation is a 3-part process of relaxation, stabilization, and picking a sensation. So wherever you are, just sit back for a second and drop your shoulders and relax. Let that stabilize. Then feel where your back is against the chair. Feel your feet on the floor. Listen to any sounds around you. Let your jaw muscles relax. Shoulders, arms, hands. Let that stabilize. Then try to listen to sounds again. And feel where your hands are. Feel the weight of your shoulders. And one final time, just really let your jaw muscles relax, facial muscles relax, shoulders, chest, arms, legs, and feel where you're sitting. Listen to the sounds. That's it. How'd that feel?
Perfect. And I like how you cued the airplane for the listen to the sounds.
Did your airplane come by again?
No, your airplane on your side I'm hearing now.
Oh, it did. Okay. I didn't hear that. I guess so anyway. No, it's fun. This is fun. I mean, I love to talk to you. Again, the last 6 months of family issues are just huge. In fact, you probably cannot solve your chronic pain without addressing the family issues. So it's become a really huge part of this whole project. It started to be, so yeah, this is fantastic. I had a great time.
Thank you so much, David. This has been truly fantastic, and honored to have you on, and really want to help people with their chronic pain. And so I think this was extremely important interview today. Thanks for having me on the show. I truly enjoyed it. Well, thank you so much. For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get back in control, and take those steps to getting rid of your chronic pain, and shine bright. Woohoo! Yes! Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much, and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!